parts of Africa. Off the coast of Guinea-Bissau, the Africa Queen is heading for forgotten islands, hidden villages, animist rites, dazzling white beaches. At the dawn of the 21st century.
African Queen مراكب كان له ومراكب كأفريقيا كو لك بلاوي هيستوري أفريقيا كو أو لك بلاوي وواجي معنا أي مكتسب أفريقيا أو أفريقيا نقدايتي حد معنا سديد أرويتا أو نظام كنا ندريري نظام كنا هاي باوريش حب كنا ندريري هذا ماشي أدونكم أنا سيدي هولا ننشر وذاي إسبرشة كو إلى ودنك هذا لا تبى مرة ملوي نولشة أيام أنا نفتر كبر نولشة ما يوين هذا برتو معنا النظام كذا النظافيات سون جركا سيدي النظافيات النظام وهذا نفتر كم إلى فضاء مركمت هذا أقسنت إنا نجاتو دريمويت معنا حدي أندي معنا هذا وهي هذا معنا مركزي درين سنت هذا أودويتو وهي هذا مركزي مليويتنا وهي نظام مسك السيستم كهذا أي waxaas dhammaan marka may waa nolosha naftarjee ka madadileen hadba qofka waqti la kadhayo waa ninka markii islaan ay waa nin iimaan leh la kaleeyo waa ka mid maana marka hadba qofka sidii wahi us aaminooy markaasay maana ma ku horseed korto ada maana ma dhe korto maana shaygan san maana beel ma dhe korto ileen hadda ay baa maana soo jiraaytii baana qofku wahi iska dhaaf maana ninka hada steemoy maana aragoytan hula meesha la ka hay maana training baa la jir maana gas usun samba ka shaqaysade معنا شقادس دم بوقف معنا سدا نغتي عملوا مركز إسنتان معنا هديوس قبضوي نولشس دم معنا كهالي وسون قطرين جم مالنتي بكنا عامة دتك كانوا نضربه سدا ده بس كوا أسكسو مرة بس كسيه ده أسكديلوي معنا أنت سمعنا وسون فرحادس نولشس بتاسا معنا نغتي سدي وسون إرساك هالوي بو تاسا لمتة مركز قفول بنو معنا إد دكان جون أيا لي مركز قفول بإد دكان جون أيا لي معنا had besedi on te somali bantu amal maana qofwal maana dagan gooni lay qabilyal gooni shalleen nin wal maana dagan ko gooni lay dad may jire oo maana oo jamaana dhahaya malaykana aamoy maana ma aamoy no ka faanayna iskaga jir dad malayka ma aamoy no badhayna iskaga jir dad malayka maana ku show dhikada baadiyo araga maana meerenin gawayn ayaa iska jir maraakib kan waa dadkii maridi hori maana oo afrika kuulka bilaaway waay النظام هذا معنا ذيك نغرراي سن أرجويتان ولا أصل ساروي إنه معنا أرجويتان معنا قلب ملاي ويكستي مركز ده بملاي كدي أرجو أوه كستي نقول معنا سدوا نلاشيس أته نقول بسدوا نلاشيس أته نيجي هذا معنا نيجي وميش أسيقون ميل كجروا وقاميو ومراكب كسي سارين معنا وقاميو يدتنا ما يكجري معنا كده شقي سدويان مكاني كده هاي مراكب أصلا بترجبوا هولس كسي دريرته هولنا لكسي هاي ورنا كشقي سدوي أي معنا ملاي مرنا ملاي الدوايا مرنا معنا سككبوا إذا مراكب أفريقيا روج هذا بوكسنت معنا سوق معنا سوق توا معنا أو هاتوا يوم تاني يعني ذي قدرتي بلاي لك كذاو حد معنا قدر على قدر كي ربط معنا يلا كحالي ميلا أو ديت شنو معنا ديت معنا أو أراغويتا معنا أو هذا ديت كم مداسة لكن ديت كم أكل الدين ما يبي مركز كاستي مداد ديت كوي معنا قف تاني قف أي هولي ما أدهاسر معنا سوق ما سوق تي إنك وين توي ميلا سوق تي إنك وين تقول معنا وهو لك حلاو لك كذا ذا هو حد معنا وهي أدربتي مركز لك حالي معنا أفكار ياشو أيو هايم سويتنك أيو هايم معنا بمبلد ليمد أيو هايم ومت وآدين هاين وكستيد لكن ما يوقف المركز وهي أسير مركز رابو باهولس كذا كرادا ديت كمان معنا ديت هذا معنا ينو go-aansho ay way maana nidaamkan iyo ayaga noloshada ka dhigay Afrika meel almeeli seeto wadan Afrika badil ku dhoon maana dib yaal laakiin sheegay kamid marka ina dib zaid yaal ya kamid bulshadiina sidii nasdeel nasdaan maroyto qofku dib shaqo laakiin ka kalsooni maana sidii nan dareer farxad meel yaal ku muuqata sidii walna shalwada hool meel la ka hay loos meel saabo ana la ka shabay way aragoyt maana sidii haday una ka sayni amal maana dhagan ka saas way biyoogi luwadu aragoyta maana sidii haddaa in qaboysid jirni ayaa lan qaboysadoy sidii haddaa maana dharkanan dhagad jiri baafkii laka dhagadoy dhalo sidii haddaa ina dheel jirni lan dhedheeloy maana dareeroy dareensanta mude maana meeshana maana leena lanka jira way dirna wala dheeloy maana meelan aragoyta dareensanta mude gurbaanki meelaka weeroy
In this district of the
Heleitio boy mana sa da boy to heleitio boy melun helenu ke doyen heleitio ba diru ya mayo mana qof walba waxa leeyo faandi no idi daga na qof walba leeyo marka oo marakibki oo badda atiga da jiro way dagan aragoyta marka hadba maana meewa doontiya koyase marakibki hiranya للشل بدبادي هذا معنا دتكوي كجلايم هذا ما لي دواتي وين معنا دونتي لتي معنا واكا مراكب كيا ما يكجري معنا ميسا كجري لك أبيه معنا هذا لك باشري معنا سنة ميال شو وانو معنا دتكي كان سوب سنة هذا بدرين كورت هذا بلي معنا دتكي سوب سنة هذا بكاس كورت سنة ما يعودي قال هذا عوده سما Africa Queen barkale marka fahandeeda marka wax walba macna nadaafadu way muhiimada ka dhigayaan ninkasi nadiifada in lagu dadaalo dadkan waa mechanical dadkii macna maanta oo huulan maraakibkan waana dareer farsamadiyo iladiyo ayaga ka dareer macna ayaga ka shaqeeyaan meesha soo walba marka si ka nagado ayaga in ayaga qabadooyaan huulas ayaga in suubiyooyaan oo maraakibkan dareer socodna dhaafayno map way meesha si meel almiili adrabta macna map kasi maraakibku waa kiilanka dareer lahay meel almiili ayaga u baahanyaa markaasi u baahanyaa in ayaga seedan ayaa maana ka bahaya maana ka seedayaan wadada seenay seedayaan meeli u baahanyaa dilaydo tigo aan soo ee maana oo ka garaabadooyaan ka shaqeeysadooyaan wata diyaarada hawada wadda had markii dareeroyd ina mapka dareeras baawar ku dareer GPS هداي معنا مقاوين هذا معنا GPS أنين كوية أفريقيا بعض هذه ما هذا معنا سيا دريرت معنا هذا تنلك درير معنا ديار ويسدي هذا درير موي تهبيد إن كورئتو بيوغ أرويت هوس استوي مرك إن ديار سارين قصاص معنا يبغى درير ديار فورا من أفريقيا هذه غايدو مرك مهم ده ما يوي حد بقف ميلا دالهيس إنسان مرك بك halahan yar iyagana dad baaba ka halayaan macna oo biyahan yar ka jira agaarkan yar leto ina diyaarad la ku dul wareejiyo macna oo saas baka daysidaan sawirada muqsanta macna gaada sidii iyo jeceliyan dhulaa oo biyahan ayno iska iyo green osk oti yar oska yar kiyaal iyo in ayaga jeceliyan macna ina markaasi oo macna ka dul wareegan ina jeceliyan dareensan tahay macna doomoosho way ku hadii la haydo marka dareensan tan male تاسو اللي جيد مركا داوش وعن معنا أنت كلا قاسين قدا بيه وهي كلمة يكدي قاسنا معنا لغة ده أفنجريس قدي هذا فهم ماسة أياس كدي قاسنا سنا ماستر كا فيديو كان
It's like when you visit someone's home, you say hello. This way they know what to expect, so they're in a receptive mood.
Diédiou has been working on the Africa Queen for 20 years. Over time, he has become the boat's ambassador to the Bijobos. He never comes empty-handed. The villagers are always grateful for his gifts, especially fish and medicine.
This is the center of the village. And here you have the empty gas cylinder. It's a gong like a telephone. If you have a party or a ceremony, they have their rules. So every village in Kaniabak has its empty gas cylinder.
Here on the island of Kaniabak, the passengers are about to make their first encounter with the Bijagos villagers. Their first impression is that of a normal African village. It takes an experienced eye and a keen sense of observation to see that the Bijogo society has very strict codes that it's important to respect.
We have to wait for permission. First, you have to ask for permission, entry visa. I'm not sure, so we'll wait for Nico to get here. Otherwise, we may run into problems. They can't just go barging in.
Trees are the pillars of Bijogo society. The Bijogos always build their villages in the shade of the kapok trees, away from the beaches. They plant their rice paddies beneath the palm trees. They build their houses from leaves and branches. They live in these temporary dwellings while they cultivate their crops on the sacred islands. If you look carefully, you'll notice a jungle gym for the children, a doghouse, and in the crown of the palm trees, bottles of palm sap.
kaas waa loodi gaashe meelan iyaga deganyan waa Chamberlain house sidii hadday siin sheegay dhigaytan way ayalkan ku wada noolya noloshan idinka aragoytan ayaa ka noolyan maana Africa Queen ayaa la dhahe hadba sidii arag jirtay maana madagii sidii inta badayni injirtan iska dayay noloshadii maanta nololkiyo hadda maanta ka jiran oo maana hooli iyo maanta hay iyo noloshii maana way iyo shaqadii iyo hayd masleeyo maana waxay maanta adan bato hadba sidii rabto maana mansalaas waa nolol aad dhibaysan ayaan iskaaga jira laakiin taas hal maana ku taliyoonsho maalinta iyaga haloon maana diyaar ah saasada unaanka si xanuunsan ma baahanya daawo oo maana qarash la jiyo isbitaal la jiyo laakiin ma awoodo karwado sabto qof asaga maalintii way inuu halo oo mi maalintii way halo mingi buu ka falanayn ama inaan shay maana isbitaal jiisid ku raadey nolol oo saas iyo milan ka wada amne laakiin saas kalena kasto maana saas nolosha iska etno xumaa ma kaara weyn maana waa mid anaga ninka LGBT leen hadii ba nolol naftani ka jirto meedana maana inta saab ma hadwa marka maniyalka tan arwayta maniyalka iyaga maanta ku nool yahay oo maana nga dambees minin kala ya jiraan dayna waa nolosha minin jilla number 1 ay maanta iyo haysan bidka meeli dabaqyal ka faano ya anaga minin ka sameeyno ko sameeyno ning ay inta sal ku nool waa kanaagtan waa gabar waana maana sagaawinta maana sharci job weeyno dagan shop weey maana urla ana la waaye maana iba fadiso kaasi ma waa dhul oo maana wax walba meesha si baahdo habki maana lan ku sameeyo hadii tumalik sheenato hadii wax walba nagato hadii dhanbal nagato waxay oo yoolku duwaya mataamigi iyo suubiyoyan qoraalka iyo wax walba maana sidii oontay shidaal jooy maana adag way walku suubiyoyan way maana meegas ugas ka dareere le mar walba qiiga saasa kori hoos si behem ar walba waa war walba in lagu suubiye maana adaga anta la geliyo aragoytan waa kuleel on demayno oo saas maana walba nangu suubi kole dambila la ku dhawe waxa lagu suubiye mataamil adbilay maana nolosha dhan balka sadaadsado ilka dheelaashan meel ay ku nooleen waana buriyal kan way qofku maana adawaa ku walaalka kin aki way laakiin iska diin meetan marka qof walba diin gooni yalay marka dadkan waa dadkii ayaga waqada maana dadkan laabkan ka jiran qabiilkii iyo ayaan nidaamkii iyo nooyan waa dadkan dadkii wareysado way salaamo idinka aragoyta maana noloshan iyaga dadka jirana ka wareysado maana waa nolol idinka qanacsan qofka hadii nolosha lay maana sidii us ahaado baadii usbaayinka dhimadaay hadii baayinka dhimadaay sida nolosha subaab ka jira waqtaas maana hadii qanacsanaa idin qanacsanaa idin jamaana nolosha ina qanacsanaado qasbay hadii wal haysadayn nolosha marka muhiimada taas way soo marka waxa problem taas toos aragoyn ma jiro laakiin information ka aniga maanta wado nime noloshaynaya ma yate waa to maanta oo la sheegay korba ay ahayno mar walba maana sidii ad wal markas kin halo yaan qabsadaas maraaso sheet soo dhawaaso isku soo baahas adoo ee dawlad walko sugayti iska jir marka ayinda awoodas maana marka qof walba maana noloshiis bina aadanka ilaahay oo mudi had ilaahay sida oo ngarsaagay maana dadkan aragoytan waa idi dhaqankeeda ka dhegan yahay hore way dadkan adsaan idi dhaqan baa la jirooyo maana nidaamka sida aragoyta sidana walna adan anyago meeli ka dhiri jirti booshay maragoyta anyago dhiri shub wayuno kan ad markaste ya saaba malan sheegay ba asaan ba wala diilay dareesan dambe
inoffensive pirogues.
waa way eegna ka dambeeyaan maanta oo ka dhaaradaayaan way maana Africa Queen waa ka maana maraakibki dilay do si shangartas biyo deegoytan marka kana asna wada nolosha maana
In the Bijagos, every moment of life is decided by the spirits, and in order to speak with them, one has to make the appropriate offerings. In most of the ceremonies, it's the Omo Grande who call upon the spirits with a display of vehemence. These men have made it through the initiation. When they were 27, they left their wives and families to go off to the sacred forest for several years. On the island of Kanyabak, the rite lasts 7 years, a record compared to the usual practices in Africa. When they come back to society, with the prestigious title of Omo Grande, they can take another wife. They are considered wise men, and they intercede with the spirits in most of the Bijogo ceremonies. Here, the chicken serves as a messenger. The way it runs around when its head is cut off, and the color of the entrails are all so many answers to the enigmas of life. They say that the spiritual powers of the Bijogos are very strong, and that many politicians come to consult them.
People come from the world over to ask favors of the spirits. First they come to make their requests, then they come back to thank the gods. We even had people come from America.
The same rules apply to this luxury hotel set up on the sacred island of Ruban. The ancestors approved the construction, and their traditional Bijogos rules about sharing are part of the everyday routine. No walls, no fences. The spirits have to be able to protect and ensure the prosperity of the establishment through the intermediary of the Omo Grande.
No torna jana kusala. No torna jana. Na unda kisinta banner. No le vale papà passi un trabalho. Pronto. Così. Va fare la sinta. Tranquillo.
Tu sei lo ceremonies?
Maana hadba sidii oo singna ka fahantan sanam way aragoyta dadka say lo buufoy oo doorada langoryoy sanam iyaga aabudo yang way maana waa in saas la weela aadi iyaga in leen weela ka dhigay marka sanam ka lo buufoy maana aniga adiga dhugayna maana oo baalugan iya buufana ogta buufoy ni dhaane kuwi shambara dadka shambarani marka oli shambarani ga amal way meelan ka dareer.
You always have to go to the ceremonies here. In Punta Anchaca, many of the employees come from the Bijagos Islands. They were trained by the hoteliers and very quickly adapted to the demands of hotel work. Their presence is also a link with the village that sold the land to the hotel. For outsiders who settle here, always have to bring something positive to the community. In the past, before the first hotels and encampments were set up, the outsiders that visited the Bijagos were mainly fishermen, and shark fishermen in particular. The fish-laden waters were and still are quite tempting for the nearby Senegalese and Guinean fishermen. To settle on the islands, one has to be able to adapt and to offer the islanders something they don't have. Alia Silla comes from Guinea-Conakry, former French Guinea. He's a fisherman, and like many before him, he came to try his luck in this zone that is specifically protected from the big factory trawlers. Alia has been accepted here in the Bijagos mainly thanks to his wife, Kadi. She is a healer, a gift she inherited from her mother. Since she arrived in the Bijagos Islands with her husband, the bench outside there who lives on another island is suffering from the same symptoms. He's come to consult for the two, for he suspects that rather than a real illness, there are some mystical forces at work. Kadi casts the cowrie shells and then starts to read them. She speaks Nalu, a very rare language. Her husband translates into Portuguese Creole, but the patient speaks only Bijago. So they need a fourth person to complete the communication.
Ad bisani ada diyagoytoy maana ina meel walba ka jira maana faalka ada la dhawaa landiya qofka bini'aadanka marka taasoo qoftan aad indayoyto maana faal marka faalkaasi way sheegton maana shay run ay nagade amal maana isfahanleen
They are useful to the community.
This old gentleman has just come from the hospital in Bubake. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, so he came to see us. By the grace of God, we can take care of everyone, even people that couldn't be cured at the hospital in Bissau. We heal young and old, people of all ages, even the most complicated cases. I had to build extra huts to house everyone. Do we go back? Do we stay? It's God who decides in the end. For the time being, we're in good health, so that means we stay. Once, I wanted to go back to my home, but the people here asked me to stay. The Bijagos function on the basis of exchange. If you want to stay, you have to show them that you have something to offer them.
The southernmost port of call of our cruise on the Africa Queen is the island of João Vieira, a sacred island reserved for growing crops, but where they've allowed an encampment to be set up. Claude was a shark fisherman before the Bijagos Natural Park declared sharks a protected species. He came here with his wife and family from Casamance in Senegal to start a new life. His wife Marie knows the king of Menek, and he's invited her to a ceremony. The family has been taking part in the everyday life of the village for several years now. They ship merchandise to Bissau, do medical transportation, and other odd jobs. It's the tribute they pay for being allowed to live a quiet life here.
They need help. They manage pretty well on their own, but they still need help. Especially when it comes to health and hygiene, they need help.
They're fervent believers. They do a lot of ceremonies. They spend a third of their time on ceremonies. They believe in their God, and they're really inscrutable. They're not complicated. You have to respect them. It's their law, their rules. And not just anyone can come and settle here. It's complicated. You have to prove your goodwill. You can't misbehave. If you step out of line, they'll send you packing right away. They're very, very conservative. They're not great hunters or great fishermen. They live and survive completely on their own. It's a different world here. You can't compare them with the Maasai or the Moroni or the Amazonian Indians, but the tribes here live in remote regions and have nothing to do with the government of Guinea-Bissau. It's a characteristic of the Bissau. Very special.
Do they have spiny lobsters here?
Because they do in Senegal. Lots of them. Catch anything? Was it good? Better than yesterday?
We got 4 barracuda, a jackfish, some bonito. Pretty good.
Quand tu débarques comme ça dans une île, les jeunes surtout.
The people here are not used to seeing tourists land on their islands, especially the younger ones. So they might behave a little strangely, but it's just out of curiosity. They'll come up to the tourists and want to touch them. I even saw little Bijogo lift up a young French girl's dress to see what was underneath, but it's really just curiosity. So you talk to the islanders. You tell them, they're like you. They're white, but they're like you. The tourists, on the other hand, sometimes you tell them how things are here. They say, no, it's not possible. And when they come, they're surprised. They think, why didn't I bring such and such a thing? They really need that. But you have to explain to them that these people don't need all that. If you give them money, what are they going to do with it? We mustn't create needs. If you create wants and needs, it just means problems for them later on.
Amy wears 3 hats on the Africa Queen: chambermaid in the morning, bartender in the evening, and when they stop over on an island at lunchtime, she gets out her first aid certificate and her nurse's uniform.
Last Sunday, I noticed this boy, but I didn't have my kit with me then, so I couldn't take care of him. But today, I'm going to dress his wound. If it's not me, it has to be the captain or the commanding officer. Only the captain, the commanding officer, or myself are authorized to dispense medicine.
I don't think these people have such a hard life. They've been living like this since they were born. We could never live this way. Never. There's no way. Especially for me. I couldn't stay out in the bush, even a single day. I really feel for these people. Of course, they're used to their way of life. And you can't compare life here with a rich country with lots of money. Here, they don't have any money. But they manage to go on living their lives just the same.
In addition to the navigation, the regular work hours, the excursions, the crew of the Africa Queen also exercise their talents as fishermen, always respecting the regulations of the natural park.
Ah, c'est les pros, hein? Ils ont grandi là-bas, ils ont grandi dans l'eau. Quand on en prend plein, on donne.
When we have a good catch, we give some to the villagers who live on the island. On each island where we catch mullet. But we do this mainly to catch bait fish. We can't use frozen bait. It would really be a shame to come here and fish with frozen bait when you can catch it so easily right here on the spot.
loin de nos résidences principales.
On land and sea, the conventions are respected to the letter. In the time-honored tradition of cruises, there's an unavoidable event, a veritable maritime ritual, the captain's evening. The crew is always ready to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty, so to speak. These men were born in the mangrove swamp, so they're used to gathering oysters from the roots. But even they are impressed by the hard life that the Bijogos lead. There are no connections between the islands, just one hospital for the entire archipelago. There are few schools and poor attendance. Even in the most remote communities of mainland Africa, the way of life has evolved. The ecological equilibrium the Bijogos have maintained since the dawn of time is of course quite topical now, but it still is subject to the outside world that comes knocking at its door more and more often.
The world doesn't stop turning. People migrate, and colonization is a thing of the past. We live in a time of globalization. So even if we don't want to, we have to accept it to keep up with the evolution of the world. These people need hospitals, schools. They've said that they want schools and medical assistance. That's why they have to do a trade-off. They give up something to get something. In this day and age, you can't live the way we lived 100 years ago. It's not possible.
If you're young in the Bijagos, it means you're strong. You've lived through the severe rainy seasons and childhood diseases. Thanks to their masks and dances, these girls will get to see Bissau, the capital, when they participate in the annual carnival competition, where the Bijagos are always a big hit. For the most part, the young Bijogos live their everyday life in the forest. They don't often get the chance to ride the boat to the main island, Bubake, where the local government and shops are concentrated. The town boasts a cyber cafe and a discotheque, open to those with hard cash, for barter is no longer accepted here. Fidel has done his very best to continue his education, but he doesn't forget the traditional costume when the occasion calls for it. The tug-of-war between the traditional and the modern started very early for this native son of Bubake.
You really have to be strong-willed to go to school. Otherwise, it just won't happen. You can't count on encouragement from your family.
Okay, dadweyne barnaamijka idinka dhegeytamay waa dadkan waxbarashada dhansho ayaa aad iyo aad maana aan ka leeqaya marka sida iyo iskool walka baradana maana dibshadata waa dad oo ayagaba maana wax xal joogo tuliyoonjaba maana dibka oo maahan ina gargaar degdeg inam fadiyo waa dad ayagaba aawshaal aan baahan marka hadana ka tabartiyo si yarto oo waxbarashada dhanjana maana kala eefsanayaan soo qofka hadii noloshiisa oo isaga من الشيء بدها شيء بنسكب في الناين معنا واحد برشة إنا معنا أو معنا أو يصير هذا صوت ضعيف صوت تاسو شيء نويت واحد لا أنت يا جماعة أنت يا أو سكول كي إذا كاربويتا معنا لما ضو أفرتو حد معنا بريان أو دت كان معنا أدان كان إذا كاربويتا معنا يقدر كنترول كسيمين كوينا إن دت كان عابيان قرب سيانا كوينا ما شاء الله iyo intii maanta hadda iskool meelika dhikadoyti oo boqosho qalanshooyina ay ogaadaan and then kadib ayaga garabsiyan ayaa noloshada had macnaa go-aan jo nagadi balse dadkan ma baahayaan in la aawiyo marka aawishaal ay karawana hag ilaa aawishaal ku kooye marka inaa dadkii caalamkana iyagana maalaan daawdadsadooyan sidii oo dhalasho waxbarashadii iyo intay waxaa joogkays qabad fadayna qof binaadin haddii walba barashadas ba ariiri ka galo marka noloshiis dhanna ariiri ka jirta amal way marka barnaamijka anagaa dawadaynay iyo xigmayksa gabgabo haddii laydho sidaas iyo intay nabadgelyo dhanka iskoolaadii ayaa waxbarashadiiyo hadda ka jiraan balse aawishaala istiilan baahanyana siinane asalaamu calaykum waraxmatullahi wabarakaatu ga barnaamijkaas ka dhamaaday dalwan